The creek was my sanctuary, its soft gurgle weaving through the pines behind my off-grid cabin. I'd inherited this cedar-sided retreat from my grandfather, who'd built it in 1968 to escape the world's noise. 5 acres of Montana solitude, powered by solar panels and a wood stove, it was my haven from city chaos. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, just me, my mutt Pixel, and the bees I kept for honey. I thought I'd left disputes behind in the urban grind. Then Karen Davis moved in next door. Karen bought the adjacent lot last spring, a flat parcel where the creek curved along our shared boundary. She was all platinum hair and sharp edges, her SUV plastered with HOA stickers. Trouble started in June when I found her hammering metal posts into the creek bank, stringing barbed wire that blocked my easement. That path was my only way to fish trout or check my beehives. I dug out Grandpa's 1978 survey, its faded lines clear. The creek access was mine, deeded and undisputed. I walked over, survey in hand, and tried diplomacy. "Karen, this fence is on my easement," I said, keeping my tone even. "The survey shows the boundary. You're blocking my creek." She didn't look up, just kept pounding a post. "HOA rules override your little map," she snapped. "This creek's a liability. Strangers wander through, fishing, leaving trash. My fence protects the community." "There's no community here," I said. "This is private land, and I don't rent my place, no strangers." Her eyes flicked to my cabin, its solar panels glinting. "Off-grid doesn't mean off-rules," she said. "You'll see." She turned back to her hammer, dismissing me. I left the survey in her mailbox with a polite note, hoping she'd reconsider. She didn't. 2 days later, the posts were cemented in, barbed wire taut. Pixel sniffed the wire and whined, sensing my frustration. I called the county recorder, who confirmed my easement was ironclad. Armed with a printout, I contacted Deputy Rogers, a lanky sheriff with a mustache like a wire brush. He arrived in his cruiser, dust swirling on the gravel road. Rogers skimmed the documents, then ambled to Karen's fence. She was there, planting a private property sign on my side of the line. "Ma'am," Rogers said, tipping his hat, "this creek belongs to his easement. Your fence is illegal. I suggest you move it." Karen's face reddened. "This is HOA land. He's a city squatter, dodging rules, running some hippie hideout with no internet. We're cleaning up this area." Rogers raised an eyebrow. "HOA doesn't trump deeded rights. Take it down or I'll cite you for trespass." He handed her my survey copy and nodded to me. "Call if she doesn't comply." I thanked him, expecting Karen to back off. She didn't. That night, Pixel woke me at 2 a.m., growling at the window. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding, and scanned the creek. Shadows moved, too quick to catch, but the beam caught fresh boot prints in the mud leading to Karen's lot. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a fence. She was testing me. The next morning, I found my no trespassing sign spray-painted red, the word squatter scrawled across it. Karen's SUV was parked by her half-built fence, a new padlock gleaming. I called Rogers again. He sighed through the phone. "She's spinning a yarn about vagrants crossing her land, says you're harboring them. I'll talk to her, but she's trouble. Watch yourself." I nodded, staring at the creek. Grandpa had fished here, taught me to cast a line, said this land was our freedom. Karen wasn't just stealing access, she was spitting on that legacy. I thought about her no-internet jab. Was she laying groundwork for some HOA power grab, like forcing Wi-Fi to track vagrants? The thought chilled me. My cabin was my refuge, unplugged by choice. If she thought she could bully me into compliance, she'd misjudged. I ordered a spool of wire to reinforce my fence and checked my beehives, their hum calming my nerves. Pixel curled up by the wood stove, oblivious to the storm brewing. Karen's fence post stood like a taunt, but I wasn't backing down. This was my land, my peace. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, just not the one she expected. 2 weeks after Karen's fence went up, I drove back from town with a truck bed full of groceries and bee supplies, the creek's sparkle promising a quiet evening. That illusion shattered when I reached my cabin. My wire fence was sliced in 3 places, jagged cuts glinting in the dusk. Deep tire tracks scarred the creek bank, mud churned like a wound. Worst of all, one of my beehives, vital to my small honey business, lay in ruins, wooden frames splintered, honey oozing into the grass. The bees buzzed in frantic orbits, their home destroyed. Then I heard Pixel yelp. My mutt limped toward me, a nailboard, a crude trap of plywood and rusty nails, stuck in his paw. My heart sank. I pried it free, blood welling, and rushed him to Dr. Harlan, the local vet. He'll need antibiotics, she said, bandaging his paw. Watch for infection. Whoever left that board meant harm. I paid the $200 bill, fury replacing my shock. Karen had escalated from petty to vicious. This wasn't a dispute anymore, it was war. I was done playing nice. At home, I ordered 4 motion sensor cameras, the kind that ping your phone every 10 seconds until you mute them. They'd arrive in 2 days, but I couldn't wait to secure my land. I called Nora Beltran, a surveyor known for her no-nonsense precision. She arrived the next morning, her pickup rattling with stakes and gear. "Show me the boundary," she said, boots crunching gravel. I handed her grandpa's 1978 survey, and she got to work, planting fluorescent orange stakes at each corner of my 5 acres. She hammered laminated placards into the ground. "Tampering with survey monuments is a felony. MCA 7020-2108. Nora didn't bluff. "Anyone messes with these, call me," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "I've seen types like your neighbor. They don't stop unless you force 'em." I nodded, glancing at Karen's lot where her SUV sat ominously still. The creek murmured, but its calm felt like a lie. That night I barely slept, Pixel's whimpers keeping me on edge. At 1:13 a.m. my phone erupted with alerts as the cameras, freshly installed, lit up. I opened the live stream, heart pounding. 2 figures in hoodies prowled the creek bank. The taller one wielded bolt cutters, snapping my fence wire. The shorter one yanked Nora's stakes, tossing them into the water with a splash. Moonlight caught their faces briefly, enough to recognize Karen's platinum hair, glinting like a beacon. The man's face was harder to place, but his lanky frame looked familiar. I dialed Deputy Rogers, sending him the footage. "That's Chandler Hayes," he said, voice grim. "Local troublemaker, been in and out of my cruiser for years. I know him from a Czech kiting bust in 21. Send me the full video." I did, my hands shaking with adrenaline. Rogers didn't waste time. He secured a warrant for criminal mischief and trespassing, and by dawn he and 2 deputies knocked on Chandler's trailer. I later saw the body cam footage. Chandler, in sagging pajama pants, swore he'd been asleep all night. Rogers held up a still from my camera, Chandler mid-grimace, bolt cutters gleaming. "Wanna try that again?" Rogers asked. Chandler's jaw clamped shut. Karen's raid came next. Rogers found my stolen stakes in her garage, stacked beside Nora's laminated placards and a half-empty can of red spray paint, the same shade defacing my no trespassing signs. Karen spun a tale about Chandler storing tools without her knowledge, but Rogers wasn't fooled. "You're on camera, ma'am," he said, cuffing her. Both were hauled to county jail. Karen posted bond by lunch, her lawyer already barking about misunderstandings. Chandler wasn't so lucky. His 2021 probation meant a no-bond hold, pending a judge's review. I sat by the creek that evening, Pixel's bandaged paw resting on my knee. The cameras blinked steadily, guardians in the dark. Karen's HOA connections and her obsession with control, maybe even that Wi-Fi scheme she'd hinted at, loomed larger now. Chandler was a pawn, but she was the queen. My cabin, my freedom, was under siege. I tightened my grip on Pixel's leash. Whatever came next, I'd be ready. With Chandler locked up on a no-bond hold, I thought the worst was over. My creek flowed freely, and Pixel's paw was healing, though he still limped past the repaired fence. But Karen, out on bond, wasn't done. Her platinum hair flashed in my mind like a warning. I needed to dig deeper, so I called Elliot, my lawyer, whose calm voice hid a bulldog's tenacity. "Let's hit the HOA," he said. "Karen's not acting alone." He was right. The boundary fight was just the surface of a bigger scheme. Elliot subpoenaed the HOA's financial records, targeting the $3,500 gate Karen had illegally installed to block my creek access. She claimed it was for community security, but the records told a different story. We found a cashier's check signed by Chandler, drawn from the HOA's reserve fund. Elliot's eyes narrowed. "This stinks of fraud," he said. We kept digging and the rot piled up. $46,900 in checks for grounds improvements, paving, benches, a phantom fountain that never existed. Chandler, the HOA's bookkeeper, had been siphoning funds for years. The gate was his latest grift. Then came the bombshell. The HOA board, with Karen as vice president, had quietly passed a new rule. All properties, even off-grid ones like mine, had to install Wi-Fi for guest monitoring. They claimed it was to track Airbnb renters and prevent vagrants, but I didn't rent my cabin, and my solar-powered retreat had no internet by choice. Elliot uncovered the real motive. The HOA had signed a $20,000 contract with a sketchy ISP called ConnectSphere, with Chandler pocketing a $5,000 kickback labeled consulting. My refusal to comply had painted a target on my back. Karen's land grab wasn't just about the creek. She wanted my property annexed to enforce her rules. Elliot filed an injunction, arguing the Wi-Fi mandate violated Montana's property rights laws. "This is coercion," he told the judge. "They're punishing an off-grid owner for living sustainably." The HOA board, blindsided by Chandler's fraud, scrambled to save face. At an emergency meeting, neighbors I'd barely met whispered apologies, saying Karen had bullied them into silence. The board voted to suspend the Wi-Fi rule pending a fraud investigation, a small win that felt like breathing again. Detective Miriam Page from the county's white-collar crime unit took the case. She was all business, her notepad filled with precise shorthand. She seized Chandler's laptop from his trailer, uncovering a digital trail of deceit, forged receipts, fake HOA meeting minutes, and a word template for neon green approved stamps used on bogus invoices. Most damning, $10,000 of the stolen funds had landed in Karen's personal account, labeled consulting fees for non-existent work. Page's team also found emails between Karen and Chandler, plotting to pressure me into selling my land once the Wi-Fi rule forced compliance. Karen lawyered up fast. Her attorney, James Hall, charged $600 an hour and deflected questions like a fencer parrying blows. "My client is a victim of Mr. Hayes' schemes," he claimed. But Chandler, facing felony theft charges and probation revocation for his 2021 check kiting case, was desperate. Page offered him a deal: testify against Karen for a reduced sentence. He took it, spilling details of their conspiracy over coffee in an interrogation room. The HOA board, horrified, voted unanimously to press charges against Chandler. They also moved to void the ConnectSphere contract, citing fraud. Elliot pushed for an audit of all HOA accounts, ensuring no more surprises. Neighbors started rallying, some dropping off homemade jam at my cabin as peace offerings. "We didn't know how bad it was," one said, eyes downcast. I nodded, still wary but softening. I spent evenings repairing my beehives, the hum of surviving bees a small comfort. The creek sparkled under starlight and Pixel chased fireflies, his limp fatting, but the Wi-Fi fight lingered like smoke. Karen was free, her lawyer spinning lies, and the HOA's wounds were raw. Elliot warned me to stay vigilant. Karen's next move could be legal or worse. I checked my cameras nightly, their red lights blinking like sentinels. My cabin, my grandfather's legacy, was still mine, but the battle wasn't over. For now, though, the creek was clear, the Wi-Fi mandate dead, and my land secure. Small wins, hard-earned. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, a stark contrast to the pine-scented air of my mountain cabin. After months of legal wrangling, Karen Davis and Chandler Hayes faced judgment. My lawyer Elliot sat beside me, his tie crisp, his notes meticulous. Across the room, Karen's platinum hair was pulled tight, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. Chandler slouched, his plea deal already inked. My motion sensor cameras, Pixel's healed paw, and the creek's quiet flow had led to this moment. I was ready for closure. Chandler's testimony came first. Facing felony charges and a probation violation from his 2021 check kiting scheme, he'd taken the DA's offer, 4 years, parole in 2, for spilling everything. In a flat voice, he described how Karen orchestrated the land grab. She wanted his creek frontage, he said, nodding at me. Said the HOA could annex it once he sold. The Wi-Fi rule was her idea: force him to install it, make his off-grid life hell, push him out. The jury leaned forward as he detailed their midnight raids, stealing survey stakes and cutting my fence to weaken my claim. Karen's $10,000 consulting, cut from the HOA's stolen $46,900, was her reward. funneled through Chandler's fake invoices. The prosecutor played my Ring camera footage, the grainy 12:47 a.m. clip showing Karen and Chandler loading rebar into her SUV the night my stakes vanished. The timestamp glowed undeniable. Karen's lawyer, James Hall, tried to spin it. Chandler acted alone. Karen was misled, but the jury wasn't buying it. My photos of the smashed beehive, Pixel's vet bill, and the red spray paint on my no trespassing signs tied them to every count: felony conspiracy, theft, criminal mischief, and misdemeanor trespassing. The verdict came fast, guilty on all charges. Karen's bond was revoked, her shoulders sagging as the judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, $32,000 restitution to me for damages, and $46,900 to the HOA for the embezzled funds. A 5-year no-contact order would follow her release. Chandler's sentence ran concurrently with his probation violations, 18 months, his parole board unlikely to be lenient. As Karen was led away, our eyes met. I gave a polite wave, not malice, just a nod to the end of her reign. She looked away, defeated. The creek felt alive again when I got home. Pixel bounded to the water's edge, his paw fully healed, chasing a dragonfly. The HOA sent a $4,500 check from Chandler's frozen accounts to cover my beehive repairs, a gesture that felt like an apology. I used it to start a greenhouse where Karen's illegal fence once stood. The frame went up fast, glass panels catching the mountain sunrise. I planted tomato seedlings and basil, their green tips a promise of new life. The bees, resilient as ever, buzzed happily, their rebuilt hives humming with purpose. Elliot called with more good news. The HOA's fraudulent Wi-Fi contract with ConnectSphere was voided, the ISB's kickback scheme exposed. The board, now under new leadership, swore off invasive rules, sending a formal letter pledging respect for off-grid owners like me. I framed it beside Grandpa's old fishing rod, a reminder of what I'd fought for. My cabin, powered by solar panels and a wood stove, remained unplugged, my sanctuary intact. Evenings found me in the greenhouse, soil under my nails, Pixel napping nearby. Neighbors, once silent under Karen's thumb, started waving as they passed. One left a basket of apples on my porch, a quiet thank you for exposing the HOA's rot. I baked a pie, the scent filling the cabin, and shared slices with Nora Beltran, the surveyor who'd staked my land. Told you she'd crash, Nora said, grinning. I laughed, the first real laugh in months. The mountains stood watch, their peaks sharp against the sky. Karen's schemes, the Wi-Fi mandate, the stolen stakes, they were scars but fatting ones. My land, Grandpa's legacy, was mine again, stronger for the fight. I sat by the creek, Pixel's head in my lap, and listened to the water. The battle was over, but the peace was just beginning. I'd earned it one camera ping at a time. The creek's murmur was sweeter now, unmarred by Karen's barbed wire or Chandler's bolt cutters. My off-grid cabin, its cedar walls warmed by morning sun, stood as a testament to the fight I'd won. Pixel, his paw fully healed, chased squirrels across the 5 acres I defended, his tail a blur of joy. The legal storm had passed, Karen and Chandler were in prison, the HOA's Wi-Fi mandate dead, and my land secure. But victory wasn't just about surviving, it was about building something new. The mountains seemed to agree, their peaks nodding in the crisp fall air. The HOA, humbled by the scandal, elected a new board. Gone were Karen's cronies, replaced by neighbors like Sarah Nguyen, a soft-spoken gardener who'd once been too scared to speak up. They mailed me a formal apology, typed on letterhead, vowing to respect off-grid owners and ban invasive rules like the ConnectSphere Wi-Fi scheme. We're starting fresh, Sarah wrote. I framed the letter beside Grandpa's fishing rod, its words a quiet triumph. The $4,500 check from Chandler's frozen accounts, meant for my smashed beehives, was already at work. I'd built a greenhouse where Karen's illegal fence once stood, its glass panes glinting like a promise. Inside the greenhouse, tomato seedlings stretched toward the light, their earthy scent mingling with basil and thyme. The bees, thriving in their rebuilt hives, danced over the clover I'd planted nearby. Every spade of soil felt like reclaiming my peace. Pixel napped in the greenhouse's shade, his snores a reminder that we'd both earned this calm. I started sketching plans for a small orchard, apple and cherry trees maybe, after Sarah mentioned her grandfather's farm. The idea rooted itself, a nod to the future. Then came the surprise. Sprout Tomorrow, an organic farming nonprofit, bought Karen's foreclosed lot. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her land, once a battlefield for HOA control, would now feed the community. Their director, Leela Carter, knocked on my door one morning, her overalls dusted with soil. "We heard about your bees," she said, smiling. "Any chance you'd consult on pollinators? We're planting natives, milkweed, lavender, maybe sunflowers." I grinned, picturing Karen's manicured lawn overrun with wild flowers. "Count me in," I said. We walked her lot, sketching beds for pollinator gardens, the creek sparkling in the distance. Leela's team was a mix of locals and volunteers, their laughter filling the air as we planned. I shared tips on bee-friendly plants, drawing from Grandpa's old journals. The work felt right, like stitching a wound closed. Neighbors I'd barely known stopped by, offering seeds or shovels. "We should have stood up to Karen sooner," one said, handing me a jar of homemade salsa. I shrugged, accepting the gift. The past was done, the present was green and growing. The HOA's changes went beyond apologies. They voided the ConnectSphere contract, saving $20,000 and ending the Wi-Fi nightmare. Sarah's board pushed transparency, posting budgets online and hosting open meetings. I attended one, sipping bad coffee in a community center, and saw neighbors debate trail maintenance instead of property grabs. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. My cabin stayed unplugged, solar panels, wood stove, no internet, exactly as I wanted. Evenings found me by the creek, Pixel's head in my lap, the water's song blending with the hum of bees. The greenhouse glowed under the stars, its frame a monument to resilience. I started a honey stand by the road, jars labeled Creek's Gold, and neighbors bought them faster than I could bottle. Sarah took a jar, promising to feature it at Sprout Tomorrow's first harvest. "You're part of this now," she said. I nodded, feeling the truth of it. The mountains watched, their silence a blessing. Karen's schemes, the Wi-Fi coercion, the stolen stakes, they were ghosts, fading with each new sprout. My cabin, Grandpa's legacy, was more than a refuge now, it was a cornerstone. I hung a wind chime by the greenhouse, its notes dancing in the breeze. Pixel perked up, chasing the sound, and I laughed. This was our fresh start: soil, bees, community, and a creek that ran free. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, root it in the land we'd fought for. A year after the courtroom gavel fell, my cabin stood prouder, its cedar walls weathered but unbowed. The creek sang its old song, free of Karen's barbed wire, and Pixel bounded through the grass, his paw long-heeled. The greenhouse glowed with tomato vines, and my bees hummed over clover, their honey jars selling briskly at the road stand. The HOA's Wi-Fi mandate, that absurd scheme to monitor my off-grid life, was a dead memory, buried with Karen and Chandler's convictions. I thought the fight was over. Then a letter arrived, stirring the ashes. Elaine Castor, claiming to be Karen's cousin, sent a typed demand for a private right-of-way across my land to access her inherited lot. The document, a poorly forged deed, screamed scam. My stomach tightened, but I'd learned from Karen's tricks. I called Elliot, my lawyer, who pulled the county records in an hour. No such grant existed. Karen's foreclosed property had no easements, and Elaine's name appeared nowhere. "She's fishing for a settlement," Elliot said. "We sent a cease and desist, citing Montana's property laws." Elaine withdrew her claim before the court date, her letter vanishing like smoke. I hung the cease and desist in the cabin, a trophy beside the HOA's apology. The victory felt sharper, with the creek sparkle as my backdrop. Restitution checks from the state's crime victim fund started arriving, small but symbolic. Karen's prison wages, garnished at $58 a month, would take decades to cover the $32,000 she owed me, but each deposit was a reminder she'd lost. The HOA's $46,900 repayment moved faster, funded by Chandler's seized assets. I used my share to buy apple saplings for the orchard I'd planned, their roots sinking into soil where Karen's fence once stood. Then came an unexpected letter from Chandler, postmarked from the state penitentiary. He'd earned a paralegal certificate behind bars and wrote in neat, slanted script. "I'm sorry for the damage," he said. "I was greedy and Karen played me. I hope your bees are okay." Enclosed was a hand-drawn map suggesting spots for my orchard: apples by the creek, cherries near the greenhouse. It was oddly thoughtful, a gesture I hadn't expected from the man who'd cut my fence. I sat by the wood stove, Pixel snoring at my feet, and wrote back, "Bees are thriving, sunflowers are taller than ever." No promises, but the exchange felt like a loose end tied. Sprout Tomorrow, the nonprofit that bought Karen's lot, was transforming it into a community garden. Their volunteers, a mix of locals and college kids, broke ground in spring, turning her manicured lawn into raised beds for zucchini and lavender. I consulted on pollinators, sketching plans for milkweed and bee balm. Deputy Rogers stopped by one Saturday, hauling compost in his truck. Karen thought she was a mastermind, he said, chuckling. Now her land's feeding folks. We shared a laugh, the creek glinting behind us. Pixel chased a volunteer's shovel, tail wagging as the garden took shape. The work was healing. Where Karen had sown division, Sprout Tomorrow planted connection. Neighbors I once distrusted brought seedlings, their kids playing by the creek. Sarah Nguyen, the new HOA president, joined a planting day, her hands muddy. This is what the HOA should have been, she said. I nodded, handing her a jar of Creek's gold honey. The Wi-Fi scheme, the stolen stakes, the smashed hives, they were ghosts, fatting in the face of this new growth. Evenings found me by the creek, the mountains, silhouette steady against the sky. The greenhouse hummed with life, and the orchard saplings stood tall, their leaves catching the breeze. Pixel flopped beside me, his warmth grounding. Grandpa's legacy, this unplugged cabin, this wild land, felt stronger now, tempered by the fight. Chandler's map lay on my table, a reminder that even broken things could shift. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I could see a path to it, like the creek carving its way through stone. Sprout Tomorrow's first blooms appeared, lavender swaying where Karen's control had reigned. The community was knitting itself back together, and I was part of it, not just a lone cabin dweller. The circle was complete, land defended, peace restored, and a future taking root. I listened to the creek, its song unbroken, and knew I was home. Spring painted my mountain valley in hues of green, the creek's sparkle a mirror to my hard-won peace. My off-grid cabin, its solar panels gleaming, stood as a sentinel over 5 acres of freedom. Pixel raced through the grass, his one singered paw forgot, while bees hummed in their hives, their honey fueling my roadside stand. Karen and Chandler's convictions, the death of the HOA's Wi-Fi mandate, and Elaine's failed land grab were fatting scars. But the true victory was blooming where Karen's schemes had fallen, her former lot, now a vibrant community garden run by Sprout Tomorrow. The nonprofit's first season was a triumph. Raised beds burst with zucchini, peppers, and tomatoes, replacing Karen's sterile lawn. Lavender and milkweed, planted with my advice, drew clouds of bees, their buzz a living rebuke to her control. Sprout Tomorrow invited me to their first volunteer day, and I brought my brush cutter, its blade ready to carve a new chapter. Deputy Rogers showed up, his cruiser swapped for a pickup loaded with mulch. From Karen's fence to this, he said, gesturing at the garden. Not bad, I grinned, handing him a shovel. New HOA members, led by Sarah Nguyen, joined the effort, their hands muddy with purpose. Neighbors who'd once ducked Karen's glare now laughed together, planting tomato stakes and swapping stories. I worked alongside them, the creek's murmur blending with their chatter. The irony was sharp. Karen had wielded HOA rules to divide us, and now her land united us. My greenhouse, built where her fence once stood, glowed nearby, its tomatoes a quiet echo of this transformation. Pixel darted between volunteers, stealing a dropped glove, and the air smelled of fresh earth and possibility. The HOA had reformed, its new bylaws banning overreaches like the Wi-Fi mandate, that absurd plan to monitor my unplugged cabin. Sarah's board posted budgets online, a far cry from Chandler's forged receipts. At a community meeting, I saw neighbors debate trail upkeep, not property grabs. My cabin remained off-grid, wood stove, solar panels, no internet, exactly as Grandpa intended. The fight had forged something stronger, a community that valued my choice, not just tolerated it. Sprout Tomorrow's garden was more than crops, it was therapy. We turned soil where Karen's greed had festered, planting roots that felt like healing. A kid from the volunteer crew, maybe 10, asked about my bees, eyes wide. I showed him a frame, honey glinting, and saw Grandpa in his curiosity. This land for growing, I said, and he nodded, clutching a sunflower seed. Rogers, wiping sweat, joked about Karen's master criminal days, and we laughed, the creek catching our voices. The mountains stood watch, their peaks steady. The garden's first harvest loomed, promising squash and carrots for a community dinner. I loaned Sprout Tomorrow a trellis from my orchard, its apple saplings thriving near the creek. Chandler's unexpected letter with its orchard map crossed my mind. He'd seen this potential, even from a cell. I wasn't ready to absolve him, but the garden proved redemption was possible. Karen's restitution, trickling in at $58 a month, was a footnote. The the real payment was this land, alive again. As we finished planting, Sarah handed me a milkweed sprig. "For your bees," she said. "I planted it by the creek, its roots joining the chorus of growth." Pixel flopped beside me panting, and I scratched his ears. The cabin, Grandpa's legacy, felt unbreakable now, its peace woven into the community we'd built. Karen's schemes, the Wi-Fi coercion, the stolen stakes, they were dust. This garden, this laughter, this creek's song, that was the final victory. I stood, brush cutter quiet, and let the moment settle. The land was ours, not just mine, and it was good. October's golden light bathed my off-grid cabin, the creek's murmur a steady pulse. Pixel bounded through the fields, his tail a metronome of joy, while bees hummed in their hives, their honey sweetening the air. Karen and Chandler's prison sentences, the HOA's failed Wi-Fi mandate, and Elaine's forged deed were distant echoes. My 5 acres, Grandpa's legacy, stood unyielding, powered by solar panels and a wood stove. But the true closure came across the creek, where Karen's former lot, once a battleground, now bloomed as Sprout Tomorrow's community garden. The nonprofit hosted a harvest dinner, tables set under string lights on what had been Karen's lawn. Plates brimmed with butternut squash, honey-glazed carrots, and heirloom tomato bruschetta, all grown steps from my cabin. Neighbors laughed, their voices mingling with the creek's song. Sarah Nguyen, the new HOA president, raised a glass to resilience, nodding at me. "You helped make this," she said. I shrugged, sipping cider. The real victory was this: nourishment where Karen's greed had festered, community where her rules had divided. Volunteers recounted my fight, cameras catching Karen's midnight raids, Elliot's legal strikes, but I let it pass.